Welcome back to another Roblox Studio tutorial. In today's video, we're going to start with something new for the mining series. So what we're going to be adding is what I'm going to call a forge. But basically what this is you can take two different crystals, like maybe a pink and a red one, and then you can try to combine those two crystals to get a new one. In this case, these two crystals don't combine, so let's clear this out and we can try another one. Let's try two pinks and see what happens. So in that case, when I combine two pinks, I get a red. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive in and see how we can do this in Roblox Studio. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started by adding this button down here that's going to open and close our frame. To add this button, what we're going to do is we're going to go under Starter GUI. We're going to go inside the Screen GUI, and then we're going to click on the plus sign. Here we're going to be adding an image button. So you can then click and drag this to wherever you want to on the screen. You can also resize it if you want to. To get the image for the image button, what I did is I went to the toolbox, and then for the drop down I selected images. In the search box I searched for anvil, and the one I'm using is this one right here. So once you find one that you like, you're going to right click on it, and then you're going to select the last option down here. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to go to your image button, and then down in properties you're going to scroll down to image, right here. You're going to delete the text that's there already, and then after that, you're going to paste in the new text. Once you do that, it should update the image to the one you selected. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do for this button is we're going to rename it to Open Forge. Make sure that you have a capital O and a capital F. The next thing we're going to work on is the forge frame, and I'm going to leave the design up to you, but one thing that I found was pretty easy is if you make a copy of the inventory frame. So let me go ahead and make this one invisible for now. So what you can do is you can take your inventory frame, and then you can press Ctrl D to make a copy of it. You can then drag it to the right a little bit and resize it. After that, I would rename it to Forge. Inside the frame that we just made a copy of, we're going to go ahead and get rid of all the image labels because we're going to replace them with image buttons. So you can go ahead and just select them all and then delete them. To add the image buttons, you're going to click on the plus sign and then click on the image button. Go ahead and move the first one to where you want it, and then you're probably going to have to make it a little bit smaller depending on how many crystals you have. Once you have it where you want to, you can make copies by pressing Ctrl D. So since I have 6 crystals, I'm going to make 6 copies. An easy way to add the images onto the image buttons is to take a look at your inventory frame, take a look at the first crystal, and then down for the image section, you can copy what's there. And then you can paste it onto the image button in the same section down for images. And then just repeat that process for the other crystals. So once you're done, it should look something like this, but obviously the images might be different if you're using different crystals. So the last thing we're going to do for these image buttons is we're going to rename them. So starting with the first one, that's going to be crystal 1, and then you're going to go all the way down to your last crystal. The next thing we'll do is we'll move our amount labels. So to move them all at once, you can just select them all. And then you can drag them over next to the crystals. Next, we're going to be adding 3 image labels. So go ahead and click on the plus sign and then add image label. So this is going to be slot 1. Let's go ahead and make a copy of it. This will be slot 2. And then this will be slot 3 down here. Okay, you can find images for these if you want to by following the same process. So you can go down to images. For my slots, I used a hammer. So this one right here is the one that I used. So I can right click and then select the last option. And then for my image labels, I'm going to go down to the image section and then paste it. For the last one, I just had some question marks. So I believe I searched mystery in the search box. And then I use this one right here. So for my last image label, I'll go down to the image section and then paste it. Okay, and next we're going to add 2 buttons. So we can click on the plus sign and then we're going to add a text button. One is going to go right here below the 2 slots, and that's going to be our clear button. And the other one is going to go at the bottom, and that's the one we're going to press to combine the crystals. To change the title up here, you can click on the title label down here. And then down for the text section, you can change it from inventory to whatever you like. Once you're done, it may look something like this here. So you can design it however you want to, but it's very important that you have all the same items with the same names. So really quick, before we go on to the script, I'm just going to go through all the different items and make sure we know all the names. For the crystals on the left-hand side here, they should be image buttons, and the name of those buttons should be crystal 1 all the way down to crystal 6, and that'll change a little bit if you have a different number of crystals. These numbers right here should be called amount, and they should be numbered 1 all the way down to the last crystal. These two objects right here are image labels. The first one should be called slot 1, and the second one should be called slot 2. Make sure you have a capital S for both of those. This plus sign is a text label, and I just renamed that to plus. This button right here is a text button, and it should be called clear. This button at the bottom is also a text button, and it should be called forge. And finally, this object down here is an image label, and it should be called result. If you need to, go ahead and pause the video now, and just look through all the different items inside the frame here, and make sure you have them all, and that they have the correct names. If you don't have things named correctly, then it's going to cause errors in the script. Okay, so now that we have the design work done, we're going to start with the scripting. The first script that we're going to write is going to be inside this button right here. So that should be inside the screen GUI, and we renamed it to Open Forge. So go ahead and click on the plus sign and add a local script. Inside the script, we're going to start by saying local frame is going to be equal to script dot parent. So that's going to get us to the screen GUI level, this one right here. And then inside the screen GUI, we're going to reference the forge frame. Next, we're going to make a variable for the button. So we'll say local open, and that's going to be equal to script dot parent. After that, we'll say frame dot visible is equal to false. That'll make sure the frame is invisible when we first start. And then we'll say open dot mouse button one click colon connect. We'll put function inside of here. We'll put parentheses. We'll move the mouse over one and then press enter. Inside here, we're going to say frame dot visible is equal to not frame dot visible. So basically all this doing is, let's say the frame is not visible to start with. It's going to reverse that and make it visible. And if the frame is visible, then it's going to reverse that and make it not visible. All right, so let's go ahead and start by checking to make sure this opens and closes the frame. All right, so you should be able to click on this button down here to open the frame and then to close it. All right, so everything looks good. So let's go ahead and move on to the next script. The next script is going to be a local script inside the forge frame. For this script, we're going to start by saying local frame is equal to script dot parent. Then we're going to say local slot 1 is going to be equal to frame dot slot 1. So this is the reason here that it's important that we rename the objects over here, because it's looking inside the frame for an object called slot 1. Okay, so next we're going to create one for slot 2. So we'll say local slot 2 is going to be equal to frame dot slot 2. And finally, we're going to make a variable for the result image. So we'll say local result is going to be equal to frame dot result. Next, we're going to create a table that we're going to store all these buttons inside of. To do that, we'll start by saying local buttons is going to be equal to an empty table. Then we'll say for underscore comma button in pairs. Inside the parentheses, we're going to put frame colon get children. So this is going to get all the different objects inside the frame here. What we're going to do with those objects is, first we're going to check to see if it's an image button. So we'll say if button colon is a. Inside the parentheses, we're going to put image button. And before we go too much farther, it looks like I misspelled button. So I'm just going to replace that O with a U. Okay, so we're checking to see if that object is an image button. If it is, then what we're going to do is we're going to say button dot mouse button one click, and then we're going to say colon connect. Inside the parentheses, we're going to put function, and then another set of parentheses. Inside the function, the first thing we're going to do is try to find the name of the crystal that we clicked on. So we'll say local crystal is going to be equal to frame, colon, find first child. Inside the parentheses, we're going to put button, dot, name. So what this is doing is whichever button we click on, so let's say it's the first one right here, it's going to take the button's name, which is crystal1, and it's going to store that inside the variable right here. And just to make sure we actually found it, let's do if crystal, then inside here, we're going to check to see which slot is free. And I think I forgot to mention this, but for slot 1 and 2, we're going to add a couple more things inside of it. So the first one is going to be a bool value. So go ahead and add a bool value. You're going to rename it to free. And the next one is a string value. So go ahead and add one of those. And you're going to rename the string value to crystal. So for the free value, this is how we're going to keep track if we can put an image there. And then we're going to store the name of the crystal inside here. All right, so now back to the script. What we're going to do is check to see which slot is open. So we'll say if slot1 dot free dot value. So this will check the value of free to see if it's true or false. If it's true, that means it's open and I can place an image there. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say then, and then we're going to say slot1 dot image is going to be equal to crystal dot image. Okay, after I put the image there, I also want to store the name of the crystal inside the string value here. To do that, we'll say slot1 dot crystal, and then we're going to say dot value, and that's going to be equal to crystal dot name. And it's very important that you're careful with the capitalization. So the lowercase c is for the variable up here, and the uppercase c is referring to the value right here. And the final thing we want to do is make sure we uncheck this value right here and make free equal to false. So we'll say slot1 dot free dot value is equal to false. Okay, so the other option, if slot1 is not free, then we want to try to put it in slot 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say else if, and then I'm going to copy this part right here. I'm going to change the 1 to a 2. Inside this statement, it's going to be almost exactly the same as what we just wrote. So let's go ahead and start by copying it. And then here, we're just going to change it from slot 1 to slot 2. All right, so that's good so far. So let's go ahead and check it out and make sure this part works. Okay, so I can open up the frame by clicking the button. And then if I click on one of the crystals, the first one shows up here. And then if I select the second one, it shows up over there. Right now, our clear button doesn't work, so let's go ahead and work on that next. So to make the clear button work, what we can do is say frame dot clear dot mouse button one click colon connect function and then parentheses. Inside here, we're going to say slot1 dot image, and what we want to do is replace it with the default image, and the default image is stored right here. So if you click on slot 1 and then go down to image, go ahead and copy what you have right there. Then over here, you're going to put quotation marks and then paste it in between the quotation marks. We're going to do the same thing for slot 2. And since it's the same image, let's just go ahead and copy this. And we'll paste it down below. But here, we're going to change it to slot 2. And finally, we want to reset the result image back to the default. So we can do that by saying result.image. And this image is different than the other ones. So let's go ahead and click on result and then copy the image text. We'll put quotation marks and then paste it. So in addition to resetting the images, we also want to reset these values right here. So let's go and start with slot 1. So we'll say slot1 dot free dot value is going to be equal to true. Then we're going to say slot 2 dot free dot value is going to be equal to true. We also want to reset the crystal value. So we'll say slot1 dot crystal dot value, and we're just going to set that equal to an empty string. And then we'll say slot2 dot crystal dot value is going to be equal to an empty string. Okay, so that should reset everything when we click on the clear button. So let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, and we'll open up the frame. We'll select 2 crystals. And then when we click on the clear button, they clear out. And then to show you what happens with these values right here, if you look inside the players folder, and then the player, and then inside their player GUI, and then inside the forge, if you take a look at the crystal value here, when I select one of the crystals, it's going to set the value equal to the crystal. So this is crystal 1, so we replace the value with crystal 1. If I clear it out, you see it went back to blank. And if I select a different crystal like this one, it replaces it with crystal 5. For the free value, you can see it's unselected, so it's not free. And then once I clear it out, it goes back to free. Okay, so the last thing we're going to work on is the forge button, so that when we click it, it's going to combine crystals. To start with that, we're going to create a table. We're going to say local combinations, and that's going to be equal to an empty table. With my mouse in between the 2 curly brackets, I'm going to press enter a few times. And let's go and start with just one combination. So we're going to use square brackets. We're going to use quotation marks. And the way we're going to signify a combination is we're going to write the name of it. So let's go and start by saying crystal 1. And then let's go and combine this with another crystal 1. So I'm just going to retype the same thing. So this means crystal 1 was combined with crystal 1. And then I'm going to say equal to. And what you put over here is going to be the result when you combine these 2 crystals. So let's say when I combine crystal 1 and crystal 1, I get crystal 3. Okay, after each entry inside this table, you're going to put a comma. And let's go and just create a couple more combinations. So I'm just going to copy this and then paste it 2 more times. For the second combination, let's try crystal 1 and crystal 2. In that case, we're going to get crystal 5. And then if we combine crystal 6 and crystal 6, let's give them crystal 1. They don't all have to be good combinations, so in this case, when I combine crystal 6 with crystal 6, I get the worst crystal. So you can play around with this and make whatever combinations you want to. Just remember, these are the 2 crystals that you're combining, and this is the result when you combine them. Alright, so finally, let's make something happen when I click on the forge button. So we're going to say frame dot forge dot mouse button 1 click colon connect. We're going to put function inside the parentheses and then more parentheses. Inside here, we're going to make a variable. We're going to say local combo. And this is going to be equal to slot 1 dot crystal dot value. So this is going to get the name of the crystal that was clicked on first. And then we're going to combine it, which we can do with 2 dots. And the other part is going to be slot 2 dot crystal dot value. So what this is going to do, it's going to take a look at slot 1 and the crystal value to see the name that was stored here. And then it's going to combine it with slot 2's crystal. So it should look something like this up here, where the first crystal's name is combined with the second one. And then what we're going to do is check to make sure that combination exists inside this table. And then if it does exist inside the table, then we're going to output the crystal. All right, sounds a little complicated, but the way we do that is if combinations, we're going to use square brackets, and then we're going to look inside this table to see if we can find combo. So that's going to be the combination of the 2 names. If we do find that, then what we're going to do is we're going to say result dot image is going to be equal to frame colon find first child. Inside the parentheses, we're going to start with the name of the table at the entry of combo. So what that's going to give us is it's going to look in the table at the entry of combo. So let's say my entry was this right here. What it's going to return is this value over here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this value right here and looking in the frame to see if I can find it. Okay, once I find it, I'm going to take the image off of it. And I'm going to take that image and store it in the results image label. Okay, so if I don't find it, which would mean the combination doesn't exist here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say result dot image is going to be equal to, and we can just grab another image from the toolbox. So for this one, I think I searched cross. Yep, so this one right here, so right click, use the last option, and then paste it over here. Oops, and we just got to make sure we put it inside quotation marks. All right, so everything should look good. Let me zoom out a little bit. So basically what we're doing is whenever the forge button gets clicked, we're going to take the two crystals that are stored in slot 1 and slot 2, and we're going to combine the names stored here. So that's going to give us something that looks like this right here. After that, we're going to search inside of our table for that particular string. If we do find that entry, then what we're going to do is we're going to take whatever's on the other side, and we're going to search inside the frame for that particular image, and we're going to take that image and store it onto results. If we don't find that combination inside of our table, then it's just going to put a cross. All right, so let's go ahead and try it out and make sure everything works. All right, so let's go and open up the frame. So one of our combinations was pink with pink. So if I add 2 pinks and then click on the forge button, we can see it gives me the red crystal, which is crystal 3. And if we double check on our script, we can see that crystal 1 and crystal 1 does in fact give me crystal 3. Okay, if we try a couple other ones. So one of the other ones is crystal 1 and crystal 2. And that should give me crystal 5, which is this one down here. There we go, that looks good. And our last one was crystal 6 with crystal 6. And if we combine those two, we should get crystal 1. All right, so everything looks like it's working. If you want to add more combinations to this, you can just follow the same pattern. So it's the first crystal with the second crystal, and then whatever resulting crystal you want. Okay, so right now we haven't included the inventory. So eventually we're going to want to check to make sure they have enough crystals to actually combine them. And then once we get a result, we're going to want to add that into the inventory. But this video is getting kind of long, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for the next one.